Guilty pleasure time. No, I'm not going to tuck into my hotel chocolates while driving, of course. Who would do a thing like that? No, what I do want to talk about is the fact that Nicki Shields, well, I quite like the Toyota RAV4. Now, bear with me here, okay? I didn't always love them. No. This is something that I think has matured over time, matured into a handsome, well-sorted mix of crossover and SUV. And let's not forget as well that it has sold really well globally over its 5 generations and provides that kind of non-threatening driving experience that works for lots of people, lots of the time. And I do like the fact that it's never likely to let you down because, well, it's a Toyota. It competes with stuff like Ford's Cougar, the Peugeot 3008, Honda's CR-V, and tons of other useful, inoffensive motoring. But I like to think of it as the kind of the milky latte of the motoring world. It fills a gap, but it's unlikely to blow your mind. Although maybe I've got a bit of a soft spot for it. So this is the new RAV4, which isn't self-charging, as Toyota would say in an advert, but it's got a plug. No, not now. We'll show that later. Anyway, where were we? This is a plug-in hybrid, as we've gathered, and it combines Toyota's most up-to-date hybrid tech with a bigger battery. So instead of being powered solely by energy from petrol, like the previous RAV4 hybrids, you can get some of your electricity from the mains, which makes it cheaper to run, but not cheaper to buy. It starts at £47,395. Yikes. We're talking price tags in the territory of a Land Rover Discovery Sport PHEV, an Audi Q5 PHEV, a BMW X3 PHEV. The list goes on. So basically, Toyota are now positioning themselves alongside these luxury brands. And, well, they found the price tag, but let's find out if it's worth it.
But before we get on to all of that, please do like, subscribe and comment.
Now, you know, the one thing that actually caught my attention when I started doing some research on the new RAV4 plug-in hybrid, well, apart from the slightly eye-watering price, is the all-electric range. Apparently, this car should manage up to 46 miles on the standard WLTP cycle, which is pretty good. It's at the top end for sure. It's a decent amount, and it's certainly going to cover off those smaller, regular journeys that you'll be doing, even when you factor in, of course, in the real world, those range figures will drop. It's a useful amount more than most of the competition, and that means that you can use the petrol engine less and plug in less. Win-win.
You get that chunky EV-only distance thanks mainly to the old adage that bigger is better. Yes, the RAV with a plug gets a much bigger battery than usual for a PHEV at 18.1 kilowatt hours. And that electricity pushes through a pair of motors that sit on each axle, giving all-wheel drive, an arrangement that you see on most of the more powerful pure electric cars. So far, it's sounding good. That 4x4 capability will also be good news when it snows or you try and get out of a muddy festival car park. There's a 2.5 litre 4-cylinder petrol engine too, obviously, and even though that sounds big, it's actually been set up for efficiency rather than speed, so will actually be more economical than a smaller conventional engine. And when the battery runs out of juice, the RAV just defaults to being a traditional hybrid like any other Toyota with a hybrid drive.
Which means it should stay marginally more efficient even if you don't plug it in as much as you should. But everyone religiously plugs in a PHEV, don't they? I'm going to start sending the plug-in police rounds. You wait. Yeah, that's going to be a thing soon. Just watch out. Even though the RAV4 sounds like it's all set up to be saintly efficient, it has a cheeky little naughty side. With a combined system output of 302 brake horsepower, it gets to 62 miles per hour in just over 6 seconds, which for a car like this is pretty nippy, especially if you consider that the new VW Golf GTI manages the same sprint in roughly the same time. I think you're going to start to realise how surprising you can be at the traffic lights in this.
But while speed is fun, it's that efficiency that you're going to be interested in if you want to try and offset the high purchase price. 22 grams per kilometre of CO2 and 282 miles per gallon, according to the rather complicated and unachievable lab equations, but it means a 6% benefit in kind tax if this is a company car, and low tax rates if you buy privately. Sorry, I know that really is boring, but the things you'll be able to buy with the money that you save in tax won't be boring. It could run to thousands every year if you're a higher tax rate payer and swapping from a diesel. Think! All the shoes, the handbags, the holidays. Ooh, the Kit Kats.
Is it like the Golf GTI to drive to? Well, no. I mean, it's quick in sport mode and competent, but it's not particularly exciting. Now, there are 3 drive modes that vary the throttle response: eco, normal and sport, all the usual stuff. And then 4 modes for the drivetrain: EV mode, then you've got the auto EV/hybrid, hybrid and charging. And, well, they do pretty much what they say they do.
The RAV always starts in EV mode and will continue to be electric until the battery exhausts itself and can run up to 84 miles per hour. Even if you push the throttle all the way to the carpet, it stays in EV. Auto EV/hybrid will try and run as much EV as possible, but pokes the engine into life when there's high power demand, dipping back to EV immediately. Hybrid mode uses a bit of engine and a bit of battery to be most efficient, and charging will pump up the battery using the engine as a generator to use later. So if you're heading into town, you can build up some electricity to use whilst you're sitting in the traffic.
Now, there is also trail mode if you want to bother a muddy field, which maximises traction, which may be useful for some of you, because the RAV4 will also tow a 1.5-ton braked trailer, which is a reasonable sized caravan if you're so inclined. Now, the pulling power is very useful for smooth starts when towing, and the 4-wheel drive mean you won't get stuck on the campsite when you drive through the muddy patch caused by the leaky loo in the caravan next door. Lovely.
And you know what? It all works very nicely indeed, as you might expect from the makers of the first mass-market hybrid, the Toyota Prius. Now, because the RAV4 doesn't do self-charging, you have to plug it in to get the best out of it. And if you do, you'll get a full battery in 7.5 hours on a 3-pin plug or 2.5 on a home wall box. And as for that EV range, well, I haven't had time to test it in too many different situations, but it seems reasonable to assume that you're going to get a chunk more than most PHEVs with smaller batteries.
And as for the rest of it, well, the steering and brakes are precise enough. You can give yourself some engine braking in regen via the paddles behind the wheel. There's a bit of body roll, but let's face it, we've all had a bit of that after lockdown, and yeah, it's fast in sport mode, but it's not exactly a sports car when you go round a bend. It's good enough, just not very exciting. Now, one thing though that really does impress is how quiet the RAV is when it's running in EV mode. There's special thick acoustic glass up front and special wheel arch linings that suck out some of the noise from the wheels. Quite impressive. Now, I know some of you love attention to detail too. Well, here's one for you, because the teeth on the gears in the gearbox are actually polished to make them smoother and quieter. Yeah, I thought you'd like that. Now, as for the outside, well, there isn't actually that much telling you that this is the PHEV version, apart from a few things. We've got this darker front mesh grille, some rather unique, snazzy alloy wheels, and then, of course, we've got the charging flap at the back, which has, well, the flap is basically the size of a barn door. I'm not quite sure why they've made it so big, but you can't miss it, that's for sure. The rest is just pure RAV, which means boxy and slightly angry looking. I mean, it kind of looks like it might have just stepped on some Lego in bare feet. Ha ha ha! Don't try that at home, kids. Now, there's plenty of space in the rear seats and a nice big boot. And even though the floor is 35mm higher than the non-plug-in versions, it's actually not enough to make a big difference. Now, up front, there are these rather plush, bespoke PHEV-only seats. And I've got to say, they are comfortable. I would happily drive all day in seats like this. It is also very easy to find the right driving position for you, and honestly, any preference can be found. It just requires a little bit of harmonies. Oh, that was too close. but you get the gist, don't you? Right, once you've found this comfortable position, take a look around. I mean, it's quite bold. I would say it's more clean and contemporary rather than show-stopping. One thing I was slightly disappointed about was the graphics used on the 9-inch screen. They just feel a little bit dated, which I was quite surprised by.
There are also a few toys to keep you amused. There's the My Tea app that controls all the usual functions like remote charging and checks, and it'll actually text you if there's a problem with the juice, which is rather handy at public charging points. But nothing that particularly stands out. You do get this stuff on most electric cars these days. Like I mentioned, the RAV plug-in starts at £47,395 for the Dynamic, which gets a different spec, including 19-inch alloy wheels, LED headlights, parking sensors, pre-collision safety systems, which also detect pedestrians and cyclists, adaptive cruise, Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, dual-zone aircon, both cables for charging options, synthetic leather, and electric driver's seat, a power boot, and finally, wireless phone charger. Whew. The Dynamic Premium weighs in at £50,895. Oh, crikey. But for that, you get proper leather, a panoramic roof, a nice 9-speaker JBL sound system, a head-up display, and heated, ventilated front seats that are both electronically motivated. Plus, you get a 5-year, 100,000-mile Toyota new vehicle warranty with 15-year cover for the hybrid system, as long as the official servicing schedule is maintained.
I think the problem that the RAV plug-in hybrid has, in my opinion, is that there are some really appealing plug-in SUVs and pure electric crossovers out there now, and most are cheaper. Now, if you do want to know more about any of the cars that compete with the RAV, then do go to electrifying.com and we'll give you the lowdown. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel and click that tick box so you get the notification on all of our next videos that drop. So you are in the know on everything around electric and hybrid cars.